Within the microtonal work, he had composition premieres, seminars and workshops. In European capitals, inventor of the microtonal keyboard prototype C-board, built in San Diego, author of the book about microtonal harmony 5 limits interval, theory and praxis, and co-author with Professor Zvonimir Šćekić on the book Mathematics and Music. His CD album Just Music for piano in 5-limit just intonation with Ravello record is among the best of 2015 in the USA, based on the Grammy Award winner John Snyder. I mean, he's with us these days, next to Harry Patch and Brad Meldau. Author of multimedia project as Harmonism, about the connection between mathematics and music, inventor of the harmonograph prototype Lira Spectrum, built in Bari in Italy after his construction. Lira Spectrum is now a permanent exhibit of the Technical Museum Nikola Tesla in Zagreb, Croatia. Winner of the 1998 Brussels Stipendium for Student of the Year. In 2004, Croatian Theatre Award for Best Dance Performance for Composition and Interpretation. 2009, Pouring the Jazz Song of the Year for Arrangement. 2015, winner of the Croatian Composer Society Contest International for CD Jazz Music. 2016, winner of the 3rd Annual European Big Band Composer Competition in Copenhagen. For Sphinx Avenue, 2018 Ethno-Music Award Franjo Kuhak for Arrangement and Composition, Harmony of Dissonance, founder of CAMA, Croatian Association of Microtonal Art, and Artistic Director of Microfest. So please welcome Zoran Šćekić.
Hello everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I will remove my headphones now because it's easier for me when I'm talking. And then later, if there is any questions, I will put them back on. Something is not working well with my speakers on the laptop. I don't know what. So first, nice regards from Croatia to everyone. Thanks for joining this meeting. And I would like to say hello to my old friends and colleagues, Agustin and Ivan Cipacli, I see here also. All the best from Croatia. And just shortly, Amir, I didn't want to interrupt the later questions, but congratulations for your presentation. My compliments. Your music that you are doing, microtonal, I like very much. It's very beautiful, and it's for me very nice. Please, can you put me on your mailing list when you have some concert or something which is online available? I would like to follow the work that you are doing. So compliments once again. And now I will begin with my presentation. So this is the presentation about the work that I did about irrational intervals. And just on the beginning, short introduction of the work that I did before. I was beginning, of course, with 5-limit intervals, and this is the book that I wrote about it, and this is the CD that Agustin told you about it, which was recorded in 2015. In the book, the composition that are on the CD, and I analyzed them in details with all the questions about 5-limit harmony. Some of them you can see here. I'm not going to read it because you all know how to read, but this is anyway short intro about what I will make for you in presentation later. Of course, after checking out the 5-limit intervals harmony, I switch a little bit further with investigating the chords inversion and higher limit intervals, which it seems this is another lecture that I'm not going to do today. And it seems that it works. Some kind of limits are working as a group in the chord, but some other are not working as a group, but as a sequence. And then inversions are not possible. So here is the summary of the investigation that I did about this, that for instance, septimal thirds and in combination with perfect fifths are generating something that I call septimal paradox. But in fact, the most important thing is that I was checking out the 7 and higher limit intervals, 13 17ths and even more. And in a sense of harmony, in fact, only the 5 limits are working as a group, where all inversions are possible, also in fundamental harmony, in expanded harmony, and in altered harmony. And in fact, the Pythagorean problem of preserving intervals within modulation is just a smaller part of bigger problem, which is preserving intervals within single tonality. And this is also the little part of the even bigger problem, which is problem of preserving intervals within the chord inversion. And this is something that I did according to just intonation. And after this, we switch to irrational intervals. So for now, goodbye just intonation, checking out the rational intervals. Of course, I wrote here random intervals, as you can see. Why random? Because you can use also completely random intervals in a harmonic structure of the tones, and this method that I have developed, which consists of 9 steps before composing, can cover this out. And I did it, in fact, for 64 Tibetan singing bowls, which also has kind of random intervals in their harmonic structure, because there is no precise technology how to build Tibetan singing bowls. You can control maybe the main frequency, the root frequency, but everything else is not possible to control with today technology. And that's why this was a very good example for me to check out these random structures in intervals. So 9 steps before composing. These are these 9 steps. And I will just run very, very fast and very shortly through all 9 steps. And if you have any questions, we can discuss it later. I can repeat the slides again, or we can stay in contact. I can send you the copy of book or something like this. So first step was, of course, spectral analysis of the singing bowls. My friend and colleague Vjekoslav Nježić, he helped me with this. We did it on Music Academy in Zagreb, and we recorded all 64 Tibetan singing bowls and made spectral analysis of every and each one of them. As you can see, some singing bowls are having only few harmonics. For instance, this one has only 4, but the bigger bowls they have more harmonics. For instance, take a look at this one. It has even 14 harmonics. The lowest one is in fact not the root tone that we can hear it. In fact, this one, we hear it as a root tone. This is something else. And going to step 2. After spectral analysis, we had to make some kind of table of harmonics, and I came up with the idea to make table like this. First, I had to take all 64 Tibetan singing bowls and line them up according to this, what I hear as a root tone. So from the lowest one to the highest one. These here letters and numbers, these are only the short name of the singing bowls, like a large heart singing bowls or a long heart and so on. So don't be confused with these names. These are just the names for singing bowls, because there are 64 of them. And after this, I was creating a table which consists of 6 octaves in 5 cents splits. So this means 1,440 columns, and each column represents 5 cents, and of course 64 rows, which present 64 Tibetan singing bowls. And then I was putting the colors in each part where the singing bowl has some kind of harmonic. The colors that I used are representing the loudness of harmonics. So red one is forte, yellow one is mezzo forte, mezzo piano, and piano. And this table is in fact very, very big, because there are 64 Tibetan singing bowls and 1,440 steps. It begins like this, and you can see here this little color spots. These are the harmonics of each and every single one of the Tibetan singing bowls. This is, of course, only the first page of the table. This is the second page, the third page, and the last page. So yes.
Interrupt you? Yeah. Yes. Can you again stop the sharing and then do the sharing? Because I thought we were going to make it. I think there's something, that's why we don't see the full screen and we don't see everything, all the examples. We don't follow what you're saying. We're still on the first. Yes, now we see it. Yes. Okay, or maybe you do it like this. Yes, now with the mouse, perfect. So we can follow better. Thank you.
Okay, now everything okay?
Now is the page 17, right? Is your page?
Yes, but do you see the big picture or you see the...
I think you forgot to click these two little boxes I was telling you about when you share. But if you keep doing it manually like this, now you're on page, we see page 17. Okay, something perfect. Thank you.
Is it now okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I run just shortly through this. So this is the table, little bit magnified, and this is how the table looks really. It's about 6 meters long. So pretty big table for checking all 64 Tibetan singing bowls. And the next step is mathematical comparison. I had to find, this is the table that Neven Polovina helped me by building it. He's a mathematician. And I had to find the singing bowls that has harmonics very near one from each other, which I called unis when the harmonic is the same frequency, and near unis when there is tolerance of 5 cents in between. So for instance, you can see here, this singing bowls has one harmonic here, and this singing bowls has the same harmonic here. So these two harmonics are unis, and these two singing bowls share one unis harmonic. For instance, there is different situation. Here is this singing bowl has one harmonic here, and this singing bowl has 5 cent lower harmonic, which is very, very near 5 cents. The next one has is this one, which has 5 cents higher than the central one. And according to this, we did, okay, I'm just showing you few pictures, and according to this, we did all this mathematical comparison. The next step was to find all unis and near unis connection between the harmonics of each and every one of 64 Tibetan singing bowls. So I repeat, unis is the same value of harmonic in the frequency, and near unis is with tolerance of 5 cents. This I also calculated in this research. So the next step was to write every singing bowl's structure in the notes. So for instance, this is singing bowls which I call LP6, and this is the harmonic structure of the singing bowls. This signs here means that these tones in harmonic structure are forte. The other one are mezzo forte. Mezzo piano and piano I even didn't took into calculation. These here are offsets in cents from each and every harmonic of the singing bowl LP6. And this here means unis and near unis connection to another singing bowl. For instance, the harmonic of singing bowl LP6 has the same value as harmonic of the singing bowl SH10. And also LH10 singing bowl has the near unis connection to LP6 with 5 cents lower. So this is the way how I wrote it for every of 64 singing bowls. Here you can see the 12 singing bowl structure, but I did it for all 64. And now one could say, okay, let's start to compose for these nice structures and choose the singing bowls that we like. But in fact, it's very hard to check this out in this way, because it's pretty confusing, at least for me. So I took another step. This was also unis and near unis harmonic compatibility that I have to find out. So for instance, if you have singing bowl LP6 and singing bowl U5, now you see this tone has unis connection to SH10, or for instance, these two are common for LP6 and U5. They both has C1 plus 35 cents. But in this way, it's very hard to work. So I developed new system of writing this down like this. So for instance, the singing bowl LP6 that you saw here, as written in the notes, I did it now in different way. This is the name of the bowl, and these are the harmonics. F sharp large, it means 2 octaves below middle C, and then C and C2 and G sharp and so on. These numbers are offset in cents. The color, black color, means forte harmonic, and the gray color, it means mezzo forte harmonic. And this little X that you can see beside some of the tones, it means this tone has a connection to some other singing ball. But you can see here to which one. Why? Because I develop another system for showing this, and this is with the lines, thick lines for UNIS connection and thin line for near UNIS connection. So in fact, what I did, I make this kind of representation of each and one of 64 singing balls, and I put them not right in the line, but I put them in the circle. So I came with this kind of picture where you can see all 64 singing balls with their harmonic structure around. And now you can see the thick lines which are representing the singing balls with UNIS connection, and thin lines, you can see the singing ball with near UNIS connection. Now it's possible to do something really and to group some of the singing balls according to their connection between each other and to form some kind of groups which are representing a pandam to a harmony. So these balls that works in a group, in UNIS or near UNIS group, these balls we can use for producing a music in harmony, which can be considered consonant, of course, according to the harmonic structure. And now, just short explanation. I make difference between two kinds of group. One group I call centralized group. What it means? It means that in group there is central ball, like for instance this one, LP4. As you can see, this ball, singing ball LP4 has UNIS connection to this singing ball, to this singing ball, to this singing ball, and to this singing ball. So it means this is group of 5 singing balls which work as a chord, but LP4 is a central singing ball. Of course, there is possibility to find something which I call decentralized singing ball groups. For instance, SH9. You see, it has UNIS connection to LP3. LP3 has connection to LH7. LH7 has UNIS connection to U2. And U2 has UNIS connection to U3. So these 5 or 6 singing balls are also group which I call decentralized singing ball groups. And this decentralized group I even didn't take into a consideration in this study. In this study, I did only centralized group. So the next step was to find all UNIS centralized groups and their scale. Scale is not in fact a scale. Scale is just summary of all tones that these singing balls inside the group are producing. So the summary of all harmonics. For instance, I took a singing ball group where the central singing ball is LP6. There are 4 balls in this group, and this is the chord that they produce with their together tones. Of course, these are the tones, these are all the tones from the group, which I call now summary scale. And of course, this should be done for all possible groups. The next step to find all UNIS and near UNIS centralized groups and scale. And of course, if you remember the picture, the near UNIS connections there are much more of this than UNIS connections. So the groups are also much bigger. So for instance, now LP6 group has 5 singing balls. This is the summary of the tones that are together. The common tones of all, and these are all the tones from this singing ball groups LP6. This is the group U5, and so on for each group. And now the next step was to select these singing ball groups that works the best and that I like the most, because there are many groups, but I choose, as you can see, 15 UNIS and near UNIS centralized groups and scales. And I had to construct 12-tone scale, 12-tone scales, now real scales that are corresponding to the tones, to all summary tones of their harmonics. Why 12 tones? Because the most keyboard has 12 keys per octave. If I had at disposal Georg Vogel 31-tone keyboard, I would generate 31-tone scales. So it's no problem. You can generate a scale with how many tones you want. So for instance, this is now LP6 group, as you can see, with much more singing balls, because we have also took the near UNIS connection. I write down all the tones that are consisting of all these harmonics, and I choose 12 of them for the scale. Also the notation, I choose this one. And which 12 tones did I use from all this? I use those tones that are featured with the most of the balls. For instance, D plus 15 cents has even 3 balls, has LP6, LH10, and SH10 and LH10. So you see, this is the way how I choose the tones for this 12 tone scale within this singing bowl group. For instance, singing bowl group LP4 has even 8 singing bowls within the group. So you see, it's a very, very thick vertical structure and vertical chord. And this is, of course, the 12th tone that I choose from all these tones to be in the scale. With this, I came up with 15 groups and 15 scales. Now I had to do table of all this that I know what I have at disposal before starting to compose. So this is the summary. These are the selection of 15 groups. These are the names of the bowls that are central bowls, singing bowls in those groups. And this is the selection of 36 Tibetan singing bowls. In fact, Peter has singing bowls that I have used for this table. And out of these 36 Tibetan singing bowls, I have extrapolated 15 different 12-tone, microtonal 12-tone scales. And now, very important part. I had to compare each scale within each other scale to see if they have common tones. For instance, LP6 scale and U5 scale, which are corresponding to central group U5 and central singing bowl group LP6, has 5 common tones. In fact, it means they have 5 same tones. Why is this important? Because if you have one scale and another scale that has 5 common tones, these scales are very close, and these singing bowl groups are very close to modulate from one to each other. This is something what in normal harmony we would say close modulation. But there are, of course, scales which don't have not a one common tone. And this is something that in normal harmony we would call distant modulation. So this is the thing that I did. And of course, now I had to build a table where I can see all of this. So these are the 15 Tibetan singing groups. And these are the common tones. For instance, LP4 group has 4 common tones with LP6 groups. Let's say LP5 has not a one common tone with SH10 groups. So if I want to modulate from LP5 singing bowl group to SH10 singing bowl groups, it will be distant modulation because not one tone is common. Why I have this kind of letter here? Because on this table, the name of the tones are given according to the notation from the LP3, for instance, group. And then these tones are C, D, G, G sharp, and A sharp. But I can add these same 5 tones. I also have in this scale, U5 scale. In this scale, they have different name of the tones. So that's why the different table. Now I see how these tones are called in this kind of group. So C, D, G, it's the same, but G is double sharp and A is again 1 sharp. So this tone is different, depending from which group I will use notation. And the last step was to give also possibility to see if I take only one singing bowl, pay attention, not one singing bowl group, but only one singing bowl. If I take one singing bowl, I have, for instance, 1, 2, 3, 4 different microtonal scale at the disposal, in which I can correspond with the tones from the scale to the harmonics of the singing bowl. If I, for instance, for singing bowl LP5, use the scale LP5, I will have 7 tones which are within the harmonics. If I use U1 microtonal scale, I will have only 3 tones from the scale which are in the harmonics. And of course, I had to do for all 36 singing bowls that I have chosen. This is in fact the last the last step before composing. when I finished this, I have started to compose a piece that I wrote. It's called Ad Formam Spectralem, which means according to the spectral form, because I really did it according to the spectral form of Tibetan singing bowls. I wrote them for string quartet and 3 keyboard. First keyboard is playing the samples of Tibetan singing bowls. Second keyboard is playing piano sound, just a normal piano sample. And the third keyboard is playing pad, which is in fact just a support for string quartet to help them with intonation. First performance of part 1 was in 2020, and the first performance of part 2 of the composition was 2023 at Music Biennale Zagreb. Unfortunately, I'm not satisfied with the interpretation that the Zagreb quartet, string quartet did. So I don't have recording to play you some parts, but I did some sample version of this, and I have 12 bars example, which I would like you to play. It's only a few seconds. First little explanation. So this is first keyboard. He is playing the samples of Tibetan singing bowls. As you can see, very, very simple example. This is the beginning of the composition, introduction to a composition Ad Formam Spectralem, where the keyboard is playing only one singing bowl at the time. Later in composition, he's playing, of course, more singing bowls at the same time, like chords, but here are only one singing bowl at a time. And I think it's a good example to hear what is the result of these 9 steps before composing. This is keyboard 2, which is playing with piano sound, and this is keyboard 3, which is playing pad, like some kind of synthesizer pad beneath everything. Also, one short explanation, what means this? This means the name of the microtonal scale, of the microtonal 12-tone scale, which is used in this 5 bars. Then we are switching to second microtonal scale, which is called U3. At the beginning, I said there are 15 different 12-tone microtonal scales. And this markings here means for the keyboard to press the lowest, one of the lowest 15 keys on the keyboard where are key switches, because during the performance they are changing the microtonal tuning. As I said, we have 15 different microtonal tuning in this piece, so that's why the keyboard player must press with the left hand one of the 15 lowest key, and in fact the assistant was doing this during the recording. So now I will play you this short example.
Perfect. Perfect. Great. Great sound.
Do you hear it?
Yes, yes, perfect. Thank you. Sorry to make you nervous.
Okay, did you all heard now this?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Very nice.
So, as you can hear, this microtonal tuning, we have in this piece, we changed 3 different microtonal tuning according to the harmonic structure of these singing bowls that we have used. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 microtonal bowls. Of course, here in LP1 group, there are 3 singing bowls, but within the same tuning. So this is one 12-bar example from this piece that I wrote. And now I would like to invite all of composers and musicians to feel free to compose for this setup of 36 Tibetan singing bowls using this 15 microtonal 12-tone scales that I have developed, because I would like to share this to hear other people writing something. Also, open invitation for everyone. This go especially for a friend from Amir, this beautiful violin player, if she is interested in to find some kind of quartet that would be interesting to play this, because in 2025 we are recording CD album on which this song will go on. If I don't find any string quartet, I will do it with the samples. And the third invitation, it's also very interesting. I am trying to begin to develop a software that will generate all these 9 steps automatically. You just have to record the sound of the instrument, and you record, for instance, 20 different sounds. I don't know of any kind of instrument or sound, and he's generating all scales and all groups together. This would be very big help, because all these 9 steps I did it manually with a pencil and paper. It took me about 8 months to finish this job, and software can do this in a matter of seconds. So this would be very nice help. So this would be the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your patience, and I'm looking forward to hear from you. You can have my contact from Augustine and from the side of the festival. And if you have any additional question, of course, you can contact me through my web or through my personal mail. This is no problem.
Thank you very much.
Thank you once again.
And but thank you for sharing this project and for the invitations. I'm sure there are many people interested in this project. I might, I'm very tempted to write straight away for this project, because I love singing bowls. I really, the sound of singing bowls is, for me, the most magical. And you can hear, of course, the overtones in the bass way.
Yes, each singing bowl is a one chord.
Yes, I really love personally this instrument, these sounds, and I would like to ask to the group. I mean, we had some problems, so we can delay a couple of minutes. No problem. If anyone has any question for Zoran, please.
Hello, Zoran. Congratulations for your job.
Hey, hello, Ivan. How are you doing, my old friend?
Only I said hi. Congratulations.
Thank you. Where are you? Are you in Mexico or in New York?
I am in Mexico.
So nice regards from Croatia.
Thank you.
Okay. I thought it was a question. Can or anyone having a question? Okay, please, Can.
Thank you so much. Zoran, it's a great piece that I heard. I'd like to really actually listen to it. I'll just try to make it quick to give other people if they have any questions. The amount of the notation that you've been using when I heard the piece was especially like beating phenomenon. I want to talk a little bit about maybe how do you see that? How do you actually see your all these calculations? It's obvious to me that they create the sound, they shape the sound, and what you were talking about, like the background of the piece, what I heard is an exceptional, motion that's coming from all these beatings, especially like your 5-cent divisions that you were talking about, the unisons. I just want to ask, like, how do you feel about like starting from it, beating phenomenon maybe, and how you are seeing your notation for yourself? Do you see yourself that you need in your notation put all this information that your piece is really creating, or do you use your just like those calculations for yourself, starting for the performers and listeners or analysts to just stay there and then see the basics and enjoy the piece? For me, especially the beating phenomenon was really not it was coming when you presented, but when I heard that exactly the beginning of the piece really started like a sound is shaped in a very particular way, with an excellent way, actually, I want to say. I just want to ask your opinion about how do you feel those artifacts, byproducts that your all these calculations and your notation that you are creating. Yeah.
I heard, in fact, 3 or even 4 questions. I'm not sure did I understood everything right, but for instance, one question that I'm sure about that you have put is about notation. How did I choose notation, and do I choosing it according to a musician and to let's say user-friendly solutions or some other solution? Did I understand right?
Yes, that could be probably. Starting from that, maybe I'm more excited about that. Do you plan all these, and do you have any very particular dimension for you to hear, or your listener to hear in your piece? Or, at least for me, I can tell I'm really hearing the shape of the sounds that you're creating with all these parameters that you provided to us. But for you, maybe starting from exactly the notation, do you have that kind of dimensional preferences, or what is your notation does for you? So please feel free to just say which part resonates more to you. Yeah.
If I understand correctly your question, yes, I mean all this study that I did before I started to compose was exactly meant on attention. It was made to create this kind of effect, because I wanted to write music that will have this kind of effect on people who are listening to it, because this kind of system provide me possibility to write something what I'm calling, and I think everyone could call it consonant music. Okay, it's irrational intervals, but they are consonant because they are made so according to the harmonics of the one single tone and of each thing. So two singing bowls that I put together in a group, which I play together, are singing bowls that are really compatible according to their harmonic structure, and I can use them as a chord. From this part is coming all these waves that you hear, all this beating that you hear, and of course I'm doing this intentionally. Of course, it's possible to write music for singing bowls only through intuition, and this also can give very nice results, but it cannot have this kind of complexity in harmonic structure as when you make all this research before and you have one new harmonic system which is not based anymore on tonality, subdominant and dominant chords. It's built on something completely, as I call it, like kind of group theory, group music theory, where you have a group of instruments that are working harmonically together, and out of this group you extrapolate a scale which is corresponding to this group. And this is in fact, I think, a fact that you have heard when you were listening it. Answering your question about notation, you see this piece is written for 3 keyboard and the strings. Writing for keyboard, it's completely not important for me what kind of notation, what kind of sharps and flats I will use. I can just use normal 12 tone from Schoenberg system. Before each note I put sharp or flat, because they don't have any effect on it, just playing the keys. But for string player, completely different story. I was trying to do it with the Zagreb String Quartet, but unfortunately they didn't practice enough. So I gave them, to each and every single one of them, I gave them a recording of Sibelius' interpretation of their lines, which are intonatively and rhythmically completely correct, 100% correct. And I gave them 2 types of scores. One score is with the notation and sharps from the scores that I was using for each scale. And second one is with empty spots for flats. And I invite them to write down this kind of sharp that they feel the most common for this kind of intonation, but they didn't do any of this. So I think there are many ways how to write microtonal music user-friendly for musicians who are playing it, but it needs to be worked out with musician personally, and of course it needs to be practice at the end. This is, I think, the most important stuff in this kind of music. Did I answer your question, or I left something out?
Perfectly, thank you.
You are mostly welcome. And thank you for the compliment.
And yeah, all the best with this project, and probably with more parts of the at Forma and Spectralem. Unfortunately we are now 4 minutes behind the schedule, but yeah, we have time. With the break we can catch up. Thank you so much, Zoran, and
thank you very much. Nice regards to everyone there.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations.
Bye.
Bye. So we continue with Can Bilir. I hope you're feeling better, Can. I'm sorry that you couldn't make it. To New York, and I will present. You're about to present gravitation of relative pitch and tonal axis. Okay, I see you are already preparing. Thank you. And so Dr. Can Bilir has completed his doctoral work in composition and musicology with a dual concentration at Cornell University in 2019. He has further developed his doctoral training at Harvard University and IRCAM in Paris. He was recently composer in residence at the University of Oxford. 100th year of the Kafka Commemoration Project, the Alby Rosenthal Bodleian Fellow at the University of Oxford, and a researcher at the University of Michigan, CSEAS. He has received numerous commissions and awards for his creative and scholarly work, including for the European Union, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the Fulbright Commission. Please welcome Dr. Can Bilir.
Thank you so much, Augustin. It took me a while to, okay. Thank you. It's very nice to be here. Just, I want to check it. You see my presentation or not?
We see your screen and several windows, but I mean, now your emails.
Thanks for introduction. One thing I want to just add that I'm a composer. That's the most significant part of me. So today's presentation I'll do is little bit. So you just a check in. You see my abstract right now?
Yes.
Perfect. So a little bit different than to the point for today. I'm going to talk about a little bit my compositional processes and want to talk about especially the analysis of koan that's been composed by James Stenny, which is a little bit like a shorter version of the paper that I'm working on, and the compositions, of course, I'm working on. So I will start with especially, it's a large subject, but I especially identify a couple of significant components of it. One big question in my mind is asking the simple and complex models and parameters and dimensions of a composition or theoretical work that we are doing as composers today. And especially for me, I'd like to underline especially the concept of the gravity and gravitation, which is significantly aligned with the fundamental frequencies we are working a lot, and especially their spectral components and harmonic spectra are very significant. But aside from these models that we are creating for composition, and for me especially, the conscious listening is a significant aspect that has compositional, theoretical, cognitive, and philosophical answers, and they're all together complexity that they create. And most importantly, especially aside from all of these theoretical or philosophical or cognitive, scientific, endeavors, one fundamental concern for me is exactly like all of us as composers and performers, the applicability. For me, the applicability lately is continuing in multi directions, which is one part is the prototypes making is involved, which started with the DIY electrics, but especially in the latest projects, I would like to talk very briefly very soon. So mainly, especially about the algorithms that we create, And all these components of model making and simple and complex, models that we apply to our compositions are the central questions of why am I analyzing James Dennis Quant today. So this is a piece that I composed, a very excerpt from a piece that from my doctoral time at Cornell University that I composed for Momente Quartet and Cornell Gamelan Ensemble. And then I made a string quartet version of that. So when we, for instance, this piece is using excessively the audio illusions in itself, and I can give some examples of that. So based on this circlic motion, in this first part, I'm really actually keeping the barbell pole idea, which I'm going to briefly talk soon. And this section especially, when we look at that, we start to hear much complex, even the same similar kind of cycles, artifacts that are coming from combinational tones and much advanced, like the previous Zoran's piece where we were hearing advanced actually harmonic spectra. For other different instruments, of course, the condition changes. This is more like what we know pitch circularity that I'm using, especially in this particular one, which is centralized more like a direction. But at the same time, especially when the harmonic context comes, it's really actually interlock into a particular anchor, such as like a frequency ratio would be our key. I use especially this kind of illusions, especially as you see that this is a visual representation, which is much a different phenomenon. But in music, we have counterparts of that, as we know. So in this example that I was lately composing for, there's Augustine was talking about the Oxford Commission that I was working on for pianists, especially with a certain impulse idea. It continues to build up 4 different parameters, and simultaneously using especially the lower end repetitions of the lower bass, starting from the niente and then goes to the forte, and then in the top part is going to from forte to down, allows us to really create that imitation, almost like what we see in the barbell pole examples. But aside from that, the illusions, I'm especially using the very complex sounds that they created by when sounds are agglomerating on top of each other, especially when the different timbral qualities and instrumental, responses, envelopes are building on top of each other. So I generally like pretty standard, like how we see in Microtonal music. Just intonation and equal temperament or Pythagorean systems to communicate with my performers, and making especially multidimensional sounds that come out of this relatively, we can call like 2-dimensional medium, which we call notation. But second aspect that I'd like to talk about especially is I'm involving into new projects such as Syrinx project between University of Tokyo, the real-life applicability of the voice that I'm working on this project to adapt with the sounds that I'm building, especially recently working on the algorithms to make an instrument like that to extend the voice, especially by creating certain kind of which we call, especially everybody's these days involved in, which is artificial intelligence. I'm more interested in the algorithm parts and machine learning components of that. This is the project is in mind, that especially how these conventions of the microtonality align with especially the extension of the voice and different instruments is a central question for me. So with this real life applicability concerns in my mind, today I'm going to a little bit talk about briefly James Denny's starting basically with the violin piece, Con. So Con, as James Denny composed in 1971, has actually two versions. So we can maybe briefly listen the piece. And this is the first version of this piece in 71. So piece has a very strict continuation, if you realize, and it starts from the G-D relations, and then it goes up all the way, actually, following the violence construction, perfect fit relations. 3-2 frequency ratio is a very central focus in this piece. And the line from one lowest pitch of the instrument and all the way up is the main idea. So when we look at the first version of the piece, and then one difference is when we start to analyze the next version, which is the string quartet that he did in 1984, we are seeing something far more complex, which is the same idea he's doing. But especially one section is very different, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So what we can see is Cohen's violin version is can be understood by the performer quite like keeping the main trajectory this way in the mind, keeping the pitch relations in a pretty straightforward line. So exceptionally simple version of that, but this is the circle of fifths, actually. And the concern is, for me especially, is the piece is real that what about the conscious listening aspects? This is why I'm asking these questions. And when we see that it's exceptional, actually simple to start from G, B to B arrival and then arrive to the E again. But string quartet version, what James Denny does is he does not continue until the crescendo of the first violin, and he stays in B, and instead he composes in the 84 version for string quartet far more complex frequency ratios that make the piece much complicated for the audience actually. And this condition made me think about like, how do we actually concern the gravitation in this piece? Is that the frequency ratios really matter for the listener or the performer or the composer or the analyst? Or are they just certain parameters of the dimensionality of James Steny's involved in, which we see especially in the spectrum view. This is the one example of the section from the comp. It's actually entire piece, what we see in here, and we can start from entire trajectory. We can see from the first G when an E arrival is here, and but when we go to the especially string quartet version, the place that I'm talking about is entrance of the other three instruments. Definitely not only expand the piece towards like this harmonic spectra, but especially this section is making like a very much like complex, almost like not noisy, but far more advanced actually spectral manifestation of the piece. When we look at what James Steny is doing in the string quartet 84 version, we actually see a pretty simple formulation as well. And that formulation is actually keeping the first violin, as we remember from the this correlation, GD. And he is keeping going with defining them as exactly like two different frequencies, which refers to exactly like a perfect fifth. And using the same idea of the directional line, that the linear progress that he's introducing. And throughout the sections that he is also introducing in the string quartet version, is doubling the frequencies, which is actually the octave, as we know that in for second violin, for instance, or like other instruments. But when we come to the section that I was talking about, especially this F section he identifies, and G section is more like a coda function. He's 3 times doubling, doubling in the second violin, and cello as well is changing this structure. So basically, his formulation is still pretty simple, but the output is exceptionally complex. Maybe I can quickly, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip that part. When we look at the layers, then Kohan gives us multiple perspectives. One, we exactly said that for us to be able to identify this linear progress, and then what we see is the microscopic level. He is mentioning especially in the 71 version, his focus is more or less in the as his own confirmation in his scores and other sources. It is one of 4 division of a semitone in the first 71 version, and then what we see is actually it refers to 12.5 cents approximation, as well as the major third. And in the next version, the 84 version, we actually see his focus is 16.60, 6 division of a semitone. But interestingly, he's also not only focusing on, it's just like giving the performers to be able to corporalize the piece, in my opinion, because when we look at the deep analysis, the piece actually gives us pretty robust and particularly centralized between 10 to 22 cents divisions, and creating that linear sections, especially with a very particular progress that he is mapping, especially to the just intonation and just intervals and frequency ratios. That's why piece sounds quite robust. Yeah. And basically, so the idea is James Steny with these 2 versions clearly have an idea as a composer to create at least like 2 layers in the first version, which is the linear progress and the frequency ratios he's creating, but it's not written on the score. But when we come in the string quartet version, we literally see the formulations that he's introducing to us, and as well as the frequency ratios that he's introducing to us as well. So with this in mind, I using an Arduino synth that I assembled, I created like a replica of that in a very short version, of course, with this piece. Actually, it takes like 20 minutes and I make it faster to share today. But what we can say is these kind of thought processes allow us to, of course, create similar kind of setup in different versions, such as like Arduino, which I'm doing in here today. I can share with you very briefly. So in this version, I'm just manipulating with these potential emitters. I'm just performing that, and then that's sent to simultaneously. I recorded this in the background is exactly that. Max segment object is tracing the pitch as well too. But main idea is like hearing exactly what is going on directionality for me, and exactly in modern technologies, which is actually James Stein is also referred in this score. We can use a Cork chromatic tuner he's referring that. So for the composer, originally it was actually a concern as well to the practicality, the theoretical aspects, and this dimensional construction of a particular, flow and the composition, what we call composition. So very briefly, I'm gonna talk about the speculation of the rhizomatic nature of the sound. And it's just like a discussion for all of us. Maybe we can ask or answer for in our own case. And it's an invitation for everyone to share their ideas, or you can comment about my piece. This is that I shared. What I claim is the concern of the pitch gravity is actually not simply one-dimensional. And we see in here example like the helix that's been coming from long history, but maybe the coin is Roger Shepard. And when we look at especially the concerns like the pitch centricity or gravitation, we encounter with like a much robust system, such as like I give an example, for instance, like beyond the circle of fifths, or like the frequency ratios that can be also applicable to this kind of four-dimensionality that's been aimed in the recent studies. The tonate system are actually, rather than simply, for instance, in this diagram, it's about the flux rather than the what particular pitches, but it's actually momentarily like all these correlations. So in koan, we also see similar kind of idea as we see. One another example is James Stein actually, he's created that what we know the Shepard tone, which was an example here is for N, his composition that he developed with Roger Shepard and Bell's lab. So under normal circumstances, we generally separate like these audio illusions or any kind of illusions from the concerns of the microtonality, not necessarily, but it's a common also practice. But on the other hand, they have significant commonalities because of the spectral continuations of the especially higher overtones. But we also encounter with something like this is not simply about the dimensionality, but positionality as well too. So when we, for instance, look at this illusion of the Penrose triangles, or especially infinite stairs, we come up with an idea that this is in fact actually nothing to do with the dimensionality, but the positionality of the how do we see and which position that we see. And of course, the process of this continuation is very significant for me. And then we see exactly the same example. From one direction, we see even actually three-dimensional object like this is in fact is actually not created from anything about one-dimensional or like four-dimensional. It's literally like three-dimensional representation in two-dimensional, and music as well too. What I would like to say is similarly, you know. And when we actually, in my opinion, and in my music, I'm generally focused on the things that I shared today and the observations that I make about James Dennis koan. Multidimensionality, multi-directionalities, and all of them together, and how do we create this four-dimensionality is the central concern, in my opinion, in James Dennis music, with simple parameters, but with a great output as well too. And I think this example that I gave, I return back to my composition, similar like the music has its own kind of limitations that we can repeat the same concern parameters, but we can also create these cognitive illusions that using that either the microtonal concept or the concept of the gravitation that we are using. Of course, we have many formulations to make it and maybe speculation, but we can also incorporate like fourth dimensionality of the general relativity or something like if we can really create in music. But on the other hand, I want to again remind that we already have the fourth dimension in music. By default, music is fourth dimensional, and harmonic spectrum is actually about what exactly the concept of the moment as a rhizomatic, you know, complexity that how we can imagine is the central question. So main claim is music's four dimensionality is exactly a concern that for us, and I think James Denny and many James Denny's multiple two pieces, especially I've been presenting today, are great starts for me to actually understand and maybe even push forward to our real life applicabilities today. So thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. Sorry about that. I was on the phone with a colleague. Yes, I would like to ask in the group if there are any questions for you. I didn't get if you used inspiration from other composers. I mean, not just this violin piece from James Denny. If you have like a tradition of reflecting of in this discourse that composers made with creativity.
I think it's a hard question. I don't definitely put myself into one tradition. Last, especially when I finished the piece that I shared, The Fallen was string quartet, was a piece that I composed in 2019 in US, Ithaca, New York. That was the final part. I really composed with, especially with complexities of how audio illusions and those spectral components with multiple limits, especially, and tuning systems as well, and how they come together with, you know, in this particular concept. So Harry Parts and all, you know, Ben Johnsons and lessons are definitely, you know, the different particular pieces as well too are maybe I can count. But after that, I especially spent, you know, this particular piece is very important for me, The Fallen, because it is also not only a string quartet piece, but it's a gamelan piece. So gamelan spectrum and, you know, and then I went to, especially completing that time, to research to Asia, to Thailand. And I see more like a, you know, global concern of that, how this can create beyond the tuning systems, more like a unified, maybe a universe for me. So I'm generally actually focusing on, rather than one single formulations in my compositions, but focusing on especially like techniques that, you know, such as like koan, for instance, has. But especially koan also has Buddhist connotations. That's why I maybe add that. That aspects are always a big question for me, the expressive parts of the composer doing. That's why I'm more into the concern of the complexity that all of them come together and really create those subtleties that we can not even pinpoint them. You know, I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, it's very interesting because it was mentioned also even today that Johnny Reinhardt, a colleague of our community, he thinks of 128 when he perceives sounds. Is it to you also something similar, or because you are saying I guess you're talking differently. I can imagine your answer, but I would like to hear your opinion about it.
About 128 or
No, how you perceive, I mean, how you understand in your brain in which system or which system do you perceive sound the best?
I think that's a pretty difficult question again, you're raising, but I'm very excited about the cognitive, especially sciences, great studies about that. And they, especially I'm working on the mathematical calculation of the how we can really apply to them, create them. But another aspect is why I'm talking about cognition. Because I think we composer have a very much rather than the calculation. For instance, like Maxim SP Sigmund object, Sigmund tilde is a fantastic
That's a great
start. And I really use it. But at the same time, when we put them together, you know, the positionality and space will actually change the entire thing. The one fundamental probability answer for that will be when we teach the students, for instance, like in the beginning, if additive synthesis, for instance, in Maxim SP, and then orchestration. When we, you know, technically we're supposed to have like all 18, you know, violins playing the same thing. It's supposed to be an additive synthesis in the same way, but physically it's not like that because of the space change the entire thing. That's why, you know, entire perception and positionality change the entire perception as well. So, for instance, when I did this Düşük, that one of the cycles, the Fallen, the string quartet for orchestra, I did for triple winds. And what we realized that in the entire concert hall, was a pretty big one, Bailey's Hall at Cornell University. The location was literally actually amplifying for the people to hear the, you know, entire auditory perception of the particular microtonal difference. And, you know, and especially when I'm using the cycles, especially the cycle is beyond, for instance, like I should say this, when we use a very particular pitch circularity, it's very obvious that we can really hear that. But when we start to use that pitch circularity in a much more complex system with other kind of system together, I figured out, especially for me, in that orchestral piece, which location that each trained listener stands on for the rehearsal hears completely different illusion because it is made out of very complex synthetic, you know, multiple illusions come together with a very much different kind of overtone systems. Some of them really canceling them each other. Exactly the example of additive synthesis when we do it in sinusoidal waves, it's actually pretty much controllable in a sense, limited with our speaker system. But when we put in orchestration, such as like, let's put like everyone plays the same pitch, then it's not actually additive synthesis that we have. So especially when I realized that this multidimensionality that I'm following for my own each piece, I'm trying to work in a different way. Literally creates actually in the physical realm completely different perception for the whoever is actually listening to that. And it comes to an end for me, especially the individual conscious listening matters the most for me, at least in my compositions. And it's been pretty difficult, but very exciting for me to, you know, do all these components in my latest work.
Thank you very much. I'm checking the time. We're a couple of minutes. No, actually, I think we have time. I'm a little bit confused now, but in the group, I would like to ask if somebody has a question. I'm also
Yes, please. I do have one. Hello. Good Sunday. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Agustin, as well, for receiving me here. I'm from Brazil and I study those matters, but I'm still very a beginner, you know. But I'd like to ask you, have you written anything about it, or do you have any references in which I could study further the combination of spectral distribution and microtones as well, as you were showing, like in the sense of psychoacoustic phenomena, isn't it? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I wrote my email here, and definitely I would like to share in the chat. I would like to share some sources, just like Genesis of music from Harry Partridge, maybe a good start for, especially like multiple limits to learn. But here's also Zoran, maybe some, or everyone actually have lots of information about that. Yeah, so I'll be happy to share other information and words about that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions, please? Okay, in that case, yeah, Kant, I hope, yeah, it's great to see you here, and you look great. It was a shame you couldn't make it to New York, but maybe next time. And yeah, we wish you all the best, and thank you so much for you sharing your work with us.
Thank you so much for Augustine, first of all, you and everyone. It was wonderful. I wish I'm there. I was really hoping that, but yeah, apologies again. I couldn't be with you. Yeah, have a wonderful event.
Congratulations. Have a nice Sunday. Okay, so now we continue. I'm checking about Mario Hurtado. He was having some internet problems and he sent me a video. So what I'm gonna do now, I will share. I'm gonna prepare this. Ay.
The guitar in the Julián Carrillo's Sonido 13. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here today to talk about a fascinating topic, the guitar in the context of Julián Carrillo's Sonido 13. Julián Carrillo, known for developing his theory of Sonido 13, revolutionized Mexican music through his exploration of microtonality. His goal was to go beyond the traditional 12-tone system and discover the infinite subdivision between them, which he called Sonido 13. Today, I want to focus on an instrument that had a fundamental relationship with this theory, the guitar. While Carrillo experimented with various instruments, the guitar was one of the first that he modified to fit his microtonal system. Throughout this presentation, we will explore the evolution of the guitar in Sonido 13, from his earliest experiments to the latest innovation that allowed his works to be performed. In 1924, Carrillo took his first steps into microtonal exploration with the guitar. He requested Baudelio García to create a 25-string guitar, each string tuned in quarter-tones intervals. However, García proposed a more practical solution, dividing the frets into quarter-tones while keeping the original 6 strings intact. This allowed for greater precision in microtonal tuning. This exchange of ideas led to the creation of the first microtonal guitar by Carrillo, featuring quarter-tones frets along the entire fretboard. This was a pivotal moment in the history of microtonal music, as it enabled Carrillo to experiment with smaller intervals than traditional semitones. During his stay in New York from 1926 to 1929, Carrillo composed several important works for the microtonal chamber music with guitar, such as Sonata Casi Fantasia and the Concertino. These pieces were performed by Genaro Nava, who used a guitar with quarter-tones fret, but with an additional modification, a 7 semi-double guitar, which featured 4 lower strings in octaves. Although these works didn't fully utilize the new instrument features, they laid the groundwork for future compositions. For example, Carrillo would later write a study for 7 guitar in third tones in 1962, which explored microtonal possibility more deeply. Carrillo didn't stop there. Throughout his career, he proposed the constructions of 15 different guitars, each designed to subdivide the tone into smaller intervals like thirds, quarters, fifths, and up to 16ths of a tone. However, only a few of these guitars were actually built. Among the guitars that Carrillo used, the ones tuned in quarter and third tones stand out. In his writings, he mentions composing exclusively for these subdivisions, as noted in the catalogs, included in his books like Sistema General de Escritura Musical and Leyes de Metamorfosis Musical. Due to the high cost of constructing so many different guitars, Carrillo proposed a more pragmatic solution, using interchangeable fretboards. These fretboards, which could be placed on a standard guitar, allowed for different tone subdivisions without the need for a new instrument for each tuning. However, these solutions had its own challenges. The fretboards only covered the guitar's first octave, making it possible to perform microtones in the upper octaves. The solutions came years later when the second octave was made fretless. This modification allowed for microtones across the entire instrument. In order to perform Carrillo complete work for guitar, I had to construct a special instrument. Following the original ideas of Carrillo and Baudelio García, this guitar has interchangeable fretboards and a fretless second octave. To facilitate the performance, the frets are color-coded: white for quarter tones, yellow for third tones, and red where both intervals coincide. An extra tuning peg was also added to incorporate a 7-string when the fretboard is set for third tones, allowing the performance of works like the Preludio for third tones guitar and Studio for 7th guitar in third tones. With this model, it's possible to perform Carrillo's entire guitar repertoire. Julián Carrillo's works in microtonality, especially with the guitar, remains highly relevant today. His ability to push the boundaries of traditional tuning and adapt such a versatile instrument as the guitar has opened new possibilities for performers and composers alike. With this guitar, we've been able to revive and reinterpret his legacy. I hope this presentation has shed some light on the importance of the guitar in the development of microtonal music and Julián Carrillo's works. Now, I would like to show you the premiere of Carrillo's guitar Preludio in thirds of tone with this guitar. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I was checking. Mario couldn't make it today. I don't know. He told me he was having some problems with the connection the other day, and he made this short presentation. So I guess, yeah. So if anyone has any questions, I will not be able to answer them actually, and because in 1 hour I have to go to I have to be. We are starting at Greenwich House in New York, so I would suggest that we finish the online sessions now, so that I have a little bit less stress to get there, and I have to transport the huge TV. I have a few things to do. So it was my pleasure. Thank you very much, everyone, for sharing the work with me, your work with us, with me as well. Of course, I'm learning so much from everyone. It's really interesting to see all the different perspectives from each one, all so close together. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone, and all the best for your projects. And I hope to hear from you again. Thank you for being with us, Icaro. Okay, no problem. All the best. Bye bye.